death. But he's blessed with wool that's among the finest and warmest in the world. And female vicuñas always give birth during the day to give their offspring the best chance of survival. Just 2 hours old, the young male is already keeping up with his mother. To birth. Vicuñas have few predators. Their biggest challenge comes from the mountains. The newborn's herd mates will recognize his distinctive smell for the rest of his life, even after he's forced out of the herd by his father in a few months' time. In the featureless Paramo, scent is an important landmark. The vicuñas use dung piles as signposts. They leave calling cards for other herds which share the sparse feeding grounds. Completely different world. In sheltered places, the low Paramo is a rich From the other side of the valley, an Andean condor watches the bear's progress. The condor is an icon of the Andes. The world's smallest birds, the hummingbirds, are the low Paramo's most active residents. Waiting for the flowers to recharge their nectar. The low Paramo shrubland waits to be recharged with moisture that comes from the two great weather systems that meet at the Andes. Warm, moist air rising from the Amazon collides with damp air from the Pacific. As the warm air rises up the volcano's slopes, it cools and condenses into cloud. The plants of the low Paramo trap the damp cloud and drip feed it to the ground. The lower slopes of the volcanoes are a living sponge. This well-watered valley is home to a female spectacled bear. She has a cub that's nearly a year old. Spectacled bears are named for the markings on their faces. Each bear has a mask as unique as a fingerprint. The male cub will soon be independent, but for now he's his mother's pupil. Each day, as they search for food, they move between the low Paramo and the cloud forest. At 3,500 meters altitude, the temperature in Ecuador, spectacled bears live alongside 18,000 different kinds of plants. There's such fierce competition for space among plants that more than 20% of them perch on branches like birds. Among the perching plants are an incredible diversity of bromeliads. Their tightly fitting leaves trap water and create miniature frog ponds high above the ground. After many years perching, amongst the highest altitude parrots in the world. A pair have a nest high in a tall, dead tree, a location also favored by bromeliads. Spectacled bears are also known as oso acupallero, the bromeliad-eating bears. But most bromeliads grow high up to catch as much sun as possible, so that's where the female heads. In the paradoxical world of the equatorial Andes, it's no surprise to find an Ice Age bear feeding on tropical plants high in a tree. Bromeliads are plentiful and available all year round. They're a sensible choice for bears that eat in bulk. Bromeliads are also rich. The female targets the tender heart where the sugars and proteins are concentrated. Spectacled bears are South America's only species of bear, and they're the best climbers in all the bear world. The cub is determined to join his mother, but although he has the will, he does not yet have the skill. Spectacled bears are dedicated plant eaters. Ironic, as they're descended from the largest land carnivores that the world has ever known. Their ancestors were the short-faced bears that thrived in North America during the Ice Ages. Spectacled bears are the short-faced bears' only living descendants. They're Ice Age relics, perfectly adapted to the cold. High above the struggling cub, his mother leaves a trail of destruction as she feeds, pushing over the bromeliad's frog ponds and showering the forest with cloud water. The cub is a fast learner. On his second climbing attempt, he makes much better progress. In Ecuador's Andes, a journey from sea level to the summit of a 6,000-meter volcano is like traveling from the equator to the North Pole. The higher you go, the colder and more challenging it becomes. It means that this high-altitude cloud forest is similar to brown bear habitat in places much further north, such as Canada. But there's one big difference. Canada's bears must cope with an enormous variation in temperature between summer and winter. But here at the equator, there are no seasons. Food is always available, and animals live here all year round. There are no long, bitter winters, so bears don't hibernate, and birds don't migrate. But they all face a daily challenge of weather which is changeable, unpredictable. The sun wins a late morning skirmish with the cloud which subsides into the valley. In just a few minutes, the seasons change from spring to summer. Many creatures have found opportunity in this unpredictable world. This is a puya, a remarkable bromeliad that's moved out of the forest up into the low Paramo. Some hardy hummingbirds have moved too. The tropical puya has become a giant. It now lives on the ground instead of perching in a tree. Its 5-meter-tall flower spikes are enough to feed 2 hummingbirds. But hummingbirds are very territorial about their food and don't like sharing. The puya has evolved a hairy coat to keep its flowers warm, and fierce spikes for protection. Puyas are well adapted to the low Paramo, but that's as far as they can go. Only the hardiest creatures survive on the volcano's higher slopes. Vicuñas are one of the few animals resilient enough to endure the high Paramo. Today they're baking in a summer heat wave. The temperature has soared into the 20s. But it could change quickly. This is a place of extremes. In minutes, it could be close to zero. Up here, most plants hug the ground for warmth. But Chuquiragua bushes stand defiantly a metre or more above the ground. They flaunt bright flowers year-round to seduce an unexpected pollinator. It's the highest altitude hummingbird in the world, the hill star. The bright pollen on this female's head shows she's found a good supply of Chuquiragua flowers. The tiny hill star has 2 chicks. This resilient solo mother has built a thick, well-insulated nest to protect them during her frequent absences. It's a good thing. The equatorial sun disappears behind clouds and the heat wave vanishes. The high Paramo is plunged into a misty autumn. The weather is always changeable, but one thing remains a constant challenge up here. The air is thin. At 4,500 meters, each breath contains only half the oxygen it does at sea level. But despite low oxygen levels, vicunias can sprint at nearly 50 kilometers an hour. And when a male chases other males away from his herd, what begins as a sprint can turn into a marathon. How do vicunias sustain this effort when the air contains so little oxygen? A vicunia can use all the oxygen available in every breath of this thin air. Its blood contains red cells that are very small, able to quickly absorb oxygen, and has twice as many red cells as human blood. The blood is also very thin and easily and rapidly pumped by its big heart to hard-working muscles. Physiologically, vicunias are better adapted to altitude than any other mammal. And hill stars are better adapted to life here than any other bird. But high altitude throws another challenge at the hill star. The air up here is half as dense as air at sea level. It's harder to fly. So, unlike hummingbirds lower down the volcanoes that hover as they feed, the hill star perches to conserve energy. Vicunias face constant challenges from each other. But rivalry is key to their survival. Tensions are rising in the bachelor herd, among the outcasts who've been unable to claim a group of females. A pair begin to squabble, and their mood proves contagious. Fights begin to break out in the herd as males pair off and square off. All these males aspire to lead a herd, but fewer than 20% of them will ever succeed. To gain leadership, they'll have to fight the dominant male, and frequent combat is the best way to hone their fighting skills. The sparring partners bite and kick and attempt to bring their opponent to his knees. Size, strength, skill, all factors which will determine the winner. One fight turns into a grudge match. Fighting is usually less physical, more psychological. But today the dueling duo can't resist a complete brawl. The duo is well matched in size and stamina, and the result is a draw. Vicuñas not only face challenges from each other, they face a direct challenge from the sun. The equator receives much more solar radiation than any other part of the world. The sun is at a direct angle to the equator, so its rays travel a shorter distance through the Earth's atmosphere and are less likely to bounce back off ozone and other molecules. Levels of damaging ultraviolet radiation are 1,000 times higher at the equator than at the poles. Animals and plants up here are protected from radiation by hairy coats and frequent thick mists. The little hill star is a tenacious survivor. These chuquiragua bushes offer him security in an ever-changing world where there can be force. The mist engulfing the high Paramo is caused by warm air rising up the flanks of the volcanoes. Lower down, it has created intense thermals. As the sharp-eyed condor soars on thermals, one of the strangest and rarest Paramo inhabitants arrives in the valley. The size of a small cow, the mountain tapir is the largest animal in the Andes. The unlikely-looking tapir has even more unlikely distant relatives, horses and rhinoceroses. Like the bears, the tapirs are Ice Age survivors. They live in remote, rugged areas. Mountain tapirs are the bulldozers of the Paramo. They create trails that other animals, such as bears, use as highways through the thick vegetation. In this changeable world, being big is a good thing. Bulk is useful for pushing through dense scrub and for keeping warm. Tapirs are mostly solitary, and they have enormous feeding ranges. Because they're so rare and range so far, it's unusual to see two animals so close to each other. Very little is known about these shy giants. These two seem content to get on with the full-time task of eating the leaves and fruits of many different kinds of plants. There are 3 species of tapir in South America, but the mountain tapir is the only one that's gone high to find opportunity in a place with few competitors or predators. The mountain or woolly tapir has evolved a coat that's black to absorb as much heat as possible from the sun and is thick for warmth. It's well prepared for the biggest challenge for all life in the equatorial Andes, surviving the long night. Like the tapir, the spectacled bear family has spent most of the day eating. It's late afternoon, and the cub is exhausted. Soon his mother will lead him to a safe resting place. The young bear has only a limited time to enjoy himself up in the treetops. He's already the same size as his mother, 1.5 meters long and weighing 60 kilograms. When he's fully grown, he'll be much larger. A male spectacled bear in his prime may weigh up to 180 kilograms. He'll be far too big to climb these high branches. To survive here, bears rely on their climbing skills and the rich bromeliad offerings of the cloud forest. Down in the valley, the tapir strategy is to have an eclectic palate, to eat a little of everything. They never linger too long in one place and spread seeds as they travel long distances through the Paramo. temperature has dropped to -6. This is the nocturnal hunting ground of an extraordinary creature. The fishing mouse is a small, fierce predator with an unusual lifestyle. She'll spend much of the night searching the stream for aquatic insects or fish. Like the bear and the tapir, the fishing mouse is an Ice Age survivor designed to withstand cold. Her solid body holds heat and her fur is thick, warm and waterproof. Also known as a water mouse, the fishing mouse is now very rare. It was once more widespread, but by the end of the Ice Ages, it had become a relic found in just a few streams. Eyesight and smell are of little use in this nighttime world. She uses long, tactile whiskers to detect prey. For a successful catch, she relies on fast reflexes, strong hands, and some luck. This species is extremely well adapted to this lifestyle. None of the small number of other rodents that also hunt in and around the streams of the Paramo are such good swimmers and divers. And only this species survives in the highest streams at altitudes of up to 4,000 meters. Like a hummingbird, the fishing mouse is small and hyperactive. She needs big meals, often. The little mouse has a big appetite, and one fish is never enough. But she must hurry. 12 hours of darkness are drawing to a close. Dawn on the high Paramo. It's -6 and has been for hours. Everything's frozen, except, surprisingly, the plants. The plants of the tropical Andes have a remarkable way of staying metabolically active all the time. Even though the plant's sap is well below zero, it's still liquid because it's super cooled. It doesn't freeze into ice that would damage delicate cell walls. This strategy only works here because temperatures never drop below -6. If the nights were any longer and colder, a supercooled plant would risk snap freezing. The coming of the sun ends the mini Ice Age, but its morning kiss can be a plant's kiss of death. With the first sun on its leaves, a plant begins to transpire. Its sap begins flowing, but then it slows. The ground is still frozen. Roots can't suck up any water. Just when things should be getting easier, the plant faces physiological drought. But within an hour, the earth will have thawed and the plant will be able to drink again. Overnight, the hill star's temperature and heart rate drop dramatically. Now she comes back to life, warmed by the sun. It's not long before she's off to find her first quick sugar fix. The sun begins to breathe warmth back into the Paramo. In just a few short hours, it'll be the height of summer. Hummingbirds are creatures of sun and heat that thrive here in the mountains at the equator. Because there are no seasons, there are year-round flowers they can rely on for energy-rich food. A Tyrian metaltail, slightly low on energy after the long winter's night, takes the easy option. Why hover when there's a handy leaf to take some of your weight? Luckily for these tiny birds, winter only lasts for one night, not for months on end, as in most other mountainous parts of the world. Survivors from the ice ages. Others, like the puya, are tropical species on a mountaintop adventure. Spectacled bears have short jaws and the cold of the Andes.